Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Our program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Inspired Home Show. I hope you have had as productive a show as we've had here, and we're really excited that we're getting a lot of positive feedback on the show floor from both exhibitors and retailers and other affiliates who have described a very productive, busy schedule of meetings, and we couldn't be happier with that. We appreciate you getting up a little early in the morning to join us on the second day of our keynote sessions. I'm Peter Giannetti with the International Housewares Association and Homepage News. And today's morning keynote, back after a little bit of a break that we all had to take, is Top Trends 2022. And it's going to be a new focus on creating value and attracting demand. Our speakers today are, excuse me for a second, are going to reveal exclusive research and insights on the constantly evolving definition of value by the consumer. A little bit about today's keynoters. Many of you may know Tom Mirabile. Tom, where are you? Come on up. Well, we'll start with Leanne to my left right now.
Sorry.
Oh, here he is.
You know, there's always going to be something, right?
Tom Mirabile, who's the founder of Springboard Futures. Tom also partners with IHA to deliver his unique research-backed trend analysis and forecasting. And we're also happy to have Leigh Schwarzkopf, who's the founder and principal of Project Partners Network. Leanne's also a frequent contributor to the IHA Inspired Home Show Industry Education Program, and Leanne specializes in providing research and strategic guidance on licensing, marketing, and new product development. With that, Tom, Leanne, welcome. Have a go for it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So just a quick show of hands. How many of you have seen me talk before here? Okay, so we won't be running last year's, but it's always good to know. No, I mean, you know, I always start out with, I'm a very nervous speaker, so I always start out with like a funny story from something stupid that I did last year, pictures or something like that. And I don't have to this year because in the past 3 days I have destroyed 2 computers. I have nearly broken my nose walking into a closet, although I'm telling people that Leanne hit me, and because better press. And it's been quite a week. I think one of the things that we were talking about is that we spend our days and nights sort of telling people, you know, how to pull their business together and how to realign. And a lot of times when people will come up with us and say, oh, yeah, it's an easy job. You know, you get to tell people what to do and then leave. And the fact is that we have really had to do a lot of pivoting ourselves. In the past year and a half, our business has completely changed, really. When we came in, we started doing, we were doing a lot of style trend, and about maybe a third of our business was consumer direction and things like that. In that year and a half, our business has almost completely shifted. We're doing about fourfold what we were doing before, which really wasn't that hard. But we have adapted to really meet the biggest needs of the business, whether you're wholesalers or manufacturers or retailers. One of the big things that we've been helping people with is just understanding where the consumer mindset is. And that's what this is about today. It's really about when value shifts, the meaning of value shifts constantly. So what does it mean when what used to mean value last year doesn't mean the same this year? And consumers are moving so quickly that sometimes it changes, overnight. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. There's no history to where we are, which in a way is a good thing, gives us a chance to evolve, and in a way it's a frightening thing. And I really want to give a shout out to the IHA because they've been so committed this year to getting new data, and it may not be something that you're used to. They work with Joe Derechowski from MPD and with us, and we really have gotten committed to keeping manufacturers, retailers in line with what people are thinking today. So make sure you check out the site and the new content they have. So with that, we created something last year, was the first year. It's all primary research. We created something called the Value Equation Index. And the idea behind that was, as I said, we deal with 14 points of value, right? So The consumer, we know the consumer thinks price is important, but how important is it? So what we've done, we're just going to do 4 of them with you today, probably the 4 or 5 most important ones. But please, you can see the rest of it. We're going to be doing an ongoing series through the year that addresses these different parts of the value equation and what they mean. The mission of it was to really examine the key elements of what the consumer says make up the value equation. And we had the joy of Leanne. I've been working with Leanne for a few years, and she's on 24/7, so very hard to get her out of the house. So I'm really happy to have you here today. And we also work with Michelle Lamb, which many of you know from the Trend Curve, and created this for the group. These are the values that people traditionally associate with, when you ask consumers, what drives your purchase? What are the points? Oh, thank you. This is helpful because I wasn't wearing my right glasses. When we ask people what seals the deal, these are the things that are the most important to people, and you can see what they are. We're going to talk about a few of them today, and the rest of them we can talk to you about a little bit later. Leanne?
Yep. So what we did in this project is we thought it would be great to look at a national sample and take the temperature of what's going on. So we built a program representative of the United States. We were very pleased that we were able to come up with a panel that had a less than 3% margin of error. We intentionally had a 70-30 female-male split because we know that females are the primary purchasers of home goods. All of the questions we asked were in relation to home and housewares purchases. We just got this data last week. It's fresh out of the box, so please bear with us. We're still working on crosstabs and stuff like that, but we did want to share this preliminary research with you. In addition to the 70-30 female-male split, we had it balanced by age, income, population, so we're able to figure out very, very specific directions and actionable items, which is one of the messages that we don't want to present data for data's sake. We want to make sure there's something that we can recommend that you do with it. With all data, keep in mind this is a point in time. This was last week. This is not necessarily representative of forever in the future, but we think there's some great directional data. We wanted to organize our thoughts around what's going to provide the consumer value. So we broke it into shopping values, things like convenience at home or convenience in the shopping experience, ratings and reviews, product assortment, and we also talked a little bit about data privacy and security because we know that's important to people. The second area we looked at was product values. What do people think about quality, that user experience when they bring it home? What are they able to do with it? What are they able to tell their friends about? We looked at it from not only a functionality standpoint, but what are some lifestyle benefits? What are the intangibles? Because we've been seeing this intangible thread weave its way through everything we've been looking at. And then we also thought you need to have corporate values in there because there's so much happening with what corporations are doing to align with consumer interests and response to what's happening in the world today. So that gives you kind of an overview of what we were doing.
So the first one we're going to talk about is convenience. We were surprised by convenience last year. Naturally, because of the pandemic, a lot of convenience became extremely important. And we wanted to show you the way we phrased it in the survey. I think one of the things that we always notice with other people's surveys is that first, they ask people about things at different points instead of asking them at the same time, where it really matters and they get to consider things together. But also, a lot of times they'll say, they'll use the word convenience, but they won't get a definition or tell the respondents what the definition of that is. So basically what we said was it's how simple or seamless a retailer makes the experience, makes service, all of that. So you can sort of see where they're sitting with that. If we had to take this and describe what the trend that we're tracking with convenience, we call it endemic urgency. And that's the idea that everything's an emergency now. We talk every once in a while about we've moved on from a quarantine mindset. In other words, we don't need it because we don't know when we're going to get out of the house, or we're not buying something quickly because we're afraid we're not going to be able to get toilet paper because it's going to be all gone. But now we've still kept this idea of I want it now, So pandemic level services are now kind of the baseline. So I think some of us, when the pandemic began, we thought, oh, well, we're going to get to go backwards and we'll retract some of these services. Consumers, as soon as they get used to something, never go backwards. So especially when it comes to service. So the expectation is that we're still going to offer the things that we offered, whether it's buy in store, or buy online, pick up in store, those types of things. And then the value of in-stock position you're going to see has really elevated. People are expecting in-stock. So this thing keeps collapsing, but the definitions of these were what makes a difference in your decision when you consider convenience. The first was extended payment and app payment. And you were going to talk about that. This was a real surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we were wondering why that was so low, and we think, again, as Tom said, services aren't going to go back. We think that it's become a baseline now, and everybody expects the touchless transaction, so it's not top of mind. It's not something they're thinking about as important because it just is. It's going to
And
continue
touchless
to be.
payment was something that it was probably number 1 or 2 in last year's index. The other thing is the idea of extended payment. So over the last year, you've seen like Afina and Klarna and all these things that let you pay over time, right? There was so much talk about it that we were really expecting it to jump up, but the fact of the matter is when you look at generational differences, it was really important to younger generations, but really not even on the radar of older generations who were maybe using it differently or not using it at all.
One of the things we did notice, and the second part of this survey that we're doing is we're polling industry to compare what industry thinks about consumer perceptions, and we don't have all that data in yet, but we do have a couple of highlights, and in stocks, we're 50% higher for the industry at 70%. So we thought that was a really interesting differentiator.
Let me just clarify for a second. One of the things that we're doing, which we should have within the next 10 days, is a comparison where we said, okay, this is what consumers think. Consumers think that convenience is this, and the industry thinks it's this important. And what she means by that difference is that consumers felt that in-stocks were 70% of them said it was really important, but when we asked retailers and manufacturers, they said only 50% of them said it was important. So that's where we have to look at alignment, and we're going to be able to present you at this is what consumers think, and this is what you think they think. So it's really kind of an interesting comparison coming up.
Yeah, and the other interesting disconnect on this slide, at least with our preliminary data, is distance was 3 times more important to consumers than it was to the industry. So people are still thinking about how I'm going to get where I'm going to get, how I'm going to buy it. So we thought that was something interesting to call
and we
out.
thought with online jumping the way it has, people wouldn't be as concerned about how close the store was. It's still a really big concern for people. So when we look at convenience in terms of a takeaway, consumers are tired of the supply chain excuse. And they keep hearing that, the supply chain excuse. It doesn't matter that it's still an issue. They're tired of it. So, and we see that, and the expectation of delivery just keeps climbing and climbing. We know that it still has to be dealt with, but those expectations have to be managed, and we have to think about alternatives. And a lot of times, you think, okay, well, what's a possible alternative? It's not going to come, it's not going to come. But we really challenge you to think about things differently. We were brainstorming, and we thought, well, what if you offered people an incentive to keep the order open? When you see it's got a high delivery, you give them a wait and save type of thing so they can say, okay, well, I'll wait 4 weeks and you're going to give me 20%, something like that. The idea of the endless aisle was something. Pre-pandemic, the endless aisle was the idea of dropships have gotten so sophisticated that you can work with vendors and show a bunch of things that they're going to dropship for you. But in an environment where in-stock matters, the endless aisle may cause you more problems than the interest, because it's developing interest for something you can't deliver, and it just engenders frustration.
And interestingly enough, I've been talking to some clients who have been getting feedback from retailers that what they're doing to combat this is additional SKU and vendor rationalization. So you really need to figure out a way how to stay in stock and deliver what the customer wants, or the retailer will find you less valuable.
And if you're a retailer, hold vendors accountable. Have constant meetings about, right now, the big guys, really do hold vendors accountable for what's in stock and how they live up to their fulfillment commitments. And of course, don't go back on service offerings. So price was interesting because last year it was kind of frustrating. We asked people, does price matter to you? And of course, it was yes, price matters. And the whole conversation was about, as soon as we asked, they immediately interpreted it as markdowns. So yeah, we want a value. But some interesting things have happened. So instead of this time, it's like, are you more likely to pay full price? We asked the more nuanced questions of, if you want it immediately, are you more willing to pay full price? Do you really hunt for promotions and things like that? And the real sort of top line for this was, at the beginning of the pandemic, we moved to value-based behaviors. A lot of us weren't sure whether we were going to lose our jobs or whether, what the future was going to hold. Were we going to still be working from home? Were our jobs possible from home? So because of that, we started very value-based behaviors, buying things that were either on sale or buying things at lower prices. Now we're moving back to a more lifestyle, something that we're more normal with, like, what is this thing worth to me? Am I going to pay a regular price? The other thing is erratic resale promotions. Because we had supply chain issues and because, the Macy's one-day sale wasn't happening. It was like all of these things, with the exception of, Amazon Prime Day, a lot of the regular promotions that we were having were not regular anymore. And because of that, that's kind of changed consumers'
Well, and you add on to that the whole idea of Black Friday is no longer Black Friday, and stores are closed on Thanksgiving,
Right.
so the season extends, essentially from Halloween until the new
Right,
year.
it's like
so the peaks and valleys have really evened out.
5-day Black Friday. And so what we wanted to point out a little bit was this creates an opportunity to capitalize on the lack of a perception of promotions. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you might reinvent yourselves that. So just to look at, consumers and price.
Yeah, I mean, we did take a look at this year to last year because we thought it was too important a topic to not address. And we thought that it was interesting to see that there's this clear difference between, especially in the somewhat and not important, where people's thoughts were on price. To us, that's because they're placing a value on other things. It's not just about the cash going out the door. It's other benefits that they can have.
I mean, it took us a minute to really look at this and say, okay, when you boil it down, you're seeing, so 2022 is in blue. 2021, you're seeing a lot of varied extremely importance in 2021, 2022, less varied extremely importance in how price is, and then a lot more somewhat importance showing up in 2022. So people are a little bit more flex about the price that they're willing to pay, and a part of that's just things are blind now. You're not really sure what the value is, because you're not always sure what the supply chain issues might be. So when we said which elements of price matter most, how do you deal with price? Again, pretty interesting what the responses were. Going lowest to highest, we were surprised to see that 17% of people said that they really wait to see on social media whether something's being promoted or not. You want to take through these? I'm sorry, I was talking your thing.
Yeah, and the second one from the left, the 22%, we had a little bit of debate on whether to put it in there, but the idea was some people will actually pay more to get the free shipping, so the convenience is more important than the price. And we found, over 20% of consumers feel that way.
And people were allowed to select 2, okay? So it's not going to add up to 100. But I think it's interesting that many consumers, like I'm a Libra, so we justify everything. It's like, okay, well, it's not on sale, but I am saving on returns. So it's
the next one that was a surprise to us was the one in the green, the I Maximize. It's I Maximize Loyalty and Rewards Points. That was so low last year that we actually left
took
it
it
off
off.
the survey.
There were so few people responding. So again, we're happy to meet with anybody and talk about the generational differences, but the real pickup here was this was very much a Gen X thing, surprisingly, was really where the spike was of people who really depended on rewards programs, especially in drug channel and in stores like Kohl's, where you get rewards. People who say they pay regular price, this is probably one of the biggest surprises to see that 36% of respondents said that they just pay regular price when they want it now and they feel that the value for money seems right. I mean, that's a big change, and a part of that is probably, the big surprise was that this is recent. So we've been seeing a lot of sort of slough off in home dollars because a lot of the incentives, the government incentives kind of evaporated. People are really dealing with the fallout of where they're going to be. So we had expected to see more people going back towards value, and then last year.
Yeah, I mean, and I will be interested in to see how all of this shifts in the next six to 8 months based on what's happening with inflation, grocery prices, whether people can go out, what's happening in the global situation. You know, it all impacts. As we said, you have to continually do your research and re-reflect, but this is where things stand now, and we thought it was fascinating.
When you look at it and you see that if you can pick, every respondent can pick two things, and only 42% of the total picked, I wait for promotions to buy something. That's really, it's significant. And so when we look at it and we say, okay, well, so we asked Don Unser, the chief retail analyst, or strategist rather, from NPD. We're really honored to have him, so we're just going to give you a little sort of kick on what he said.
NPD is hearing from clients is the topic of pricing. During this pandemic, NPD has watched pricing go up in almost every industry on average that we track. The difference between unit performance and dollar performance has been acute since almost day one of the pandemic. There's lots of reasons why average sales price or price has gone up in the industries that we track, but it does differ by industry, by category, in some cases by brand and by retailer. Some of the main reasons could be that there were promotions pre-pandemic and there's not promotions during the pandemic. Could be that the raw goods have increased and that's been passed on to the consumer, both from the manufacturer to the retailer to consumer. Or it could be that the consumer is just buying a higher mix of product. NPD has been trying to help clients figure out what the root causes are of the pricing changes, and quite frankly, what to do about it and how to manage it going forward as hopefully we are coming out of this pandemic. So we're encouraging all clients to take a really hard look at their pricing strategy and their pricing utility during these coming quarters.
I think one of the interesting things is, I mean, if you boil down the message, a lot of it is about really looking inside your house and seeing by category, by classification, okay, why is the average price point of cutting boards going up? Is it because it was a supply chain issue, people wanted it more during this period? Is it, are there less promotions so we're able to get more out of it? But I think that it really means drilling down to your individual business. And one of the things that we think is a real opportunity in this whole thing is that this environment of pricing offers a real clean slate. When consumers, they don't have a benchmark of a sale price to work against. So it's an opportunity to really look at your business and say, what should promotions be? Ask them what they want promotions to be. You look at people like Warby Parker or outside of our industry, people who have really innovated in the way they run their sales. BOGO's never existed in our industry. It was much more of a cosmetic industry. We picked it up, and Ready to Wear picked it up also. So it's really looking outside and saying, what would my people like promotions to be? And maybe even asking them, and doing a simple survey. And just creating promotional offers that are responsive, that give people what they want. Really talk about how often would it be. High frequency, we see a lot of people putting it off, but when things become less predictable, margin can really benefit from it. Trust. So we gave a definition of trust as trust refers to your sense that a retailer or brand is credible, reliable, authentic, and committed to delivering value to its consumers. It's funny because trust came in, I think last year it was number 3. This year on the survey it came in as the number 2 most important value. It's incredible because it's completely intangible, really. And we call it the unsung hero for a very specific reason, because trust has a durable and outsized impact on other things in the value equation. So if people feel like they can trust you, they also feel like your quality is probably good. It tumbles down to affect everything that you do, really. Also, we're seeing, we're going to talk about this a little bit, but consumers are continuing to sort of trust outsource. In other words, you may not trust a new brand that you see on Amazon, but you will believe the X number of reviews that got 5 stars. So you're going to make a decision based on your trust of other consumers. And that's what we mean when we talk about trust outsourcing. You'll buy a brand that you trust. So sometimes for companies that don't have a lot of cred, and you want to get cred fast, there's different ways of getting to that. And Leon's going to talk about that a little. And then branding and licensing is real trust hotspots. You know, a great way during an unstable time to sort of gain trust easily.
Yeah, so as Tom said, we didn't dive really deeply into merit of trust. You can see that, you know, only 2% of people didn't think it was important. We're trying to figure out who those 2% are. But we really wanted to segue into brand and how brand fits into this whole thing, because brand is such a fundamental element of trust. So we took a look at different things about brands, things like a brand gives me a sense of community. That didn't score as high as some others. We think it might be the category, because again, we asked about home and housewares products. So if we were looking at T-shirts or something, or football jerseys, you might feel a stronger sense of community. The personal growth and building skills surprised us a little bit in this market, but we think it might be because some other things have gotten more important. But the confidence and in trusted experts and the reputation and status are really they're the part of the brand. I mean, and that's what people are responding to. They want to feel comfortable in the choices they make because there's a quality or a status associated with them, and that translates very nicely into housewares.
And there's some overlap there that's kind of important. Like if you look at Martha, I don't even have to use the last name anymore. If you look at Martha Stewart, when that was originally kind of a personality brand. Okay, you bought it because you related to her, you related to the way she lived. Then she started like cooking 24/7. You stopped relating to her. But
I just
now
want to add,
she's become a confidence brand. You know that she delivers quality. You know when you go into Home Depot, if it's a pet bed or a carpet, the quality level that you associate with her, it's brand confidence rather than personal confidence. But some people, for some people, there's an overlap there. So that's kind of the difference that we're talking about.
But we also talk about, just to clarify, brand personality also can apply to a non-person brand, like KitchenAid stands for something, Betty Crocker stands for something. Dash stands for something. There could be a fun element involved, or a personality, or a durability, and those are brand personality characteristics as well.
Betty Crocker's had a really interesting sort of reboot, so if you get a chance, take a look at them online or at the show. Really, really cool.
Okay, we also took a look at how important brands are to the generations. And we thought this would be really interesting because there's a lot of anecdotal information out there that younger people are not as loyal to brands. And the striking thing here was brands matter to every generation. They just might deliver on that expectation differently. And the other thing to think about is brands and their importance can vary based on private brands or legacy brands, and the opportunity that brings for a challenger brand is to come in and make your mark. But it's also something that you need to think about if you're a legacy brand, and how do you keep your position? How do you reinforce? How do you reach the new people? So we thought that was a great slide showing that brands are important. They can be the decision maker on the shelf.
I think, it's really funny. They almost look like 4 of the same thing, but when you look at the 2 blues, somewhat to very important, and seeing that across all generations. One of the things that when we dig a little bit deeper and we have some of this, you'll see that younger generations tend to do more transitory brands, more social media based, maybe somebody who's on a YouTube channel, so it may not last forever, whereas older generations tend to go for more sort of durable types of brand relationships. You want to talk
We
about
went ahead one more.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we put this in here because for us it's become such an important part of trust, and we're hearing so much about it that we wanted to ask people. So how important is data privacy, data safety, data security to you? And the numbers were not surprisingly incredible. So you've got more than, and this was just a single response, so they only got to select one, of course, and you had more than almost 80% of people saying that it was very to extremely important. What that tells us is, I mean, and you can talk about the numbers if you want, but it's a lot of risk. So it's sort of like when we look at how this is someplace where we could lose a consumer really quickly because we partner with somebody who's not careful with their data. And a lot of people have sort of tried to sort of, head it off at the pass by putting, you're agreeing to things much more earlier in transactions. You're agreeing to cookies in certain conditions and to purchase conditions. A lot of it's liability. Bottom line is, if they screw you, you're not going to deal with them again, and that's why trust is so important. But the numbers were great.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. I mean, the $265 billion estimate, that's primarily institutions, but people are recognizing that this topic is not just about big companies, it's about hospitals, it's about my bank, it's about how I'm going to be able to do business. And Zoe looked up last night, 311% increase in 2 years on ransomware for individuals, totaling, $350 million payout. I mean, that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of consumers that have impacted by this.
Hi, it's Kevin Leigh.
Whoops. So what we did, we wanted to bring in another expert to talk about trust. We thought, who better than Kevin Keller? He is a professor of branding at at Tuck, at the business school at Dartmouth. And he's a world-renowned expert on brand and working with consumers on how to maximize your impact with your brands. And if you haven't looked at strategic brand management, I encourage you to do.
Hi, it's Kevin Leigh Keller from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College, and I'm really happy to be able to zoom in here, literally and figuratively, in a recording, to add to Leanne's talk today at the Inspired Home Show. Just want to talk about trust for a few minutes and just make 3 really quick points about trust. And one is, it's a core marketing and branding concept. In part, just when you think of the definition of a brand, the brand is in what its function is. Its function is to reduce risk, to set expectation. It's a promise. And when you think of it in that way, trust is so fundamental and essential to believing in the ability of a person, a company, organization, retailer, what have you, to actually deliver on a promise and reduce risk. 1. 2 is, trust is an important component in credibility. Credibility is a critically important marketing concept. What makes a person or organization credible are a function of 3 things. 1 is expertise. You're good at what you do. The 2nd is trust. You have my interest in mind. And the 3rd is likability. You're just interesting, fun, appealing. You need all 3. And it's rare to find people or companies or brands with all 3. But trust is a crucial component of that. Expertise itself is not enough. Likability is not enough to be truly credible. So trust plays a crucial role there. Now, my 3rd point complicates things some. And that's, as important as trust is, it varies in terms of perceptions of trust, how they're formed, how they, the effect they may have across different groups, and certainly in terms of age. And I think Leanne has some research data that speaks to that. But the realization that you have to understand how trust gets, perceptions get formed with a younger generation, but for any particular customer segment, is really important in making sure that you do the things to build the trust, to get all the benefits you get from having a stronger brand, in a particular loyalty and greater profits, which are crucial. So just 3 quick thoughts. I'm glad I had a chance to stop by, if you will. I hope you have enjoyed the rest of your session and have a great conference. So thanks so much, and take good care.
So happy. So the takeaway on trust.
Go ahead.
No, it's you.
You're a faster talker.
Okay. So
we just realized we don't want to run out of time, and we've got a lot of material to cover, so we're going to speed it up.
Speed things a bit. On trust, it's the highest ranking of the intangibles, so it's really important to pay attention to. It's very squishy around the edges, so you got to find out what trust means to your customers. Generationally, younger generations tend to give trust faster and lose it faster. So and when you think about cancel culture is about trust. You violate my trust, not only am I going to stop using you, I'm going to tell everybody that I know what you did to me so they stop using you. And broken spelling is apparently forever too. Broken trust is forever. I mean, it is, especially for younger generations, they just won't use you again. So it's, in a way, it's a sort of silent killer. Some people will, for every one person who says you violated their trust, there are 9 people who don't tell you, and you have already. So it's important to understand that there's a lot of so quality. We define quality as delivers reliable performance, safety, durability, desirable material properties, desirable aesthetics. So, granted, it stretches out. It's a very broad definition. What we're tracking here is, again, sort of similar to the last one, viral cross influence, meaning that it influences almost every other part of the value equation is influenced by quality. Trust, brand, price, they're all affected. It's the #1 review driver. So over 90% of reviews that you read on Amazon are driven by either the lack of quality or the exceptional quality. Consistent high quality delivers long-term profit. It's something we forget about sometimes because, but consumers know it's why there's this abiding, it's more expensive, but it's going to be better. A part of it's just boomer idiocy, which I'm part of, but the other part is that we know that when we buy something quality, it lasts longer, fewer returns from our perspective, fewer returns, and generally speaking, it's because of all that, the net profit is better.
Yeah, and to build on what Tom said just briefly, this is where one bad review can really do a lot of damage. I mean, how many of you have looked at reviews online and you might have 4.9 positive reviews, and then you find the 2 that say this was not as expected, the size was wrong, it didn't perform, and you have doubt in your mind.
Right. Of course, when you look at it, it's always important to everybody. So what we decided to do, because this was frustrating, was to drill down and say, okay, let's ask people to choose, of these possible, they were allowed to choose 2. What really matters most when it comes to the qualities of a quality product? Material composition we were surprised. It was very, very low. When we dug a little deeper into it, we found out that trusted brands who are trusted with quality, are trusted to make their own material decisions. So when you buy from a brand that you trust for good quality, you assume they're making the right choice. Design aesthetics, also surprisingly low. It wasn't considered a quality issue, it was considered a design issue. And also a part of that is, as we're buying longer term things, things that we want to last longer, we don't want to go over the edge when it comes to style.
Right, but we also think design aesthetics is, again, one of those, it's the cost of entry. I mean, even at low price points, people expect nice design, nice features, easy to use, so it might not be as top of mind. Interestingly enough, the #1 category in this list for the industry data that we've collected so far is that whole design, color, and trend. Off the charts is the most important thing. So we think that's an interesting thing to dig into a little deeper.
And we'll just sort of cut to the chase. When you look at this, as we go up the things that are really pulling ahead, reliable performance, durability, ease of use, safety. So what is that telling us? Well, quality, in the new age that we're living in right now, period, quality means it's going to last, and also we start looking towards the desire for everyday usability. So it's, I want to be able to use it reliably, it's easy, it's safe, and you'll see when you look into when we look further in, we see some of the things sort of start stretching ahead, like ease of use and safety, very important to Gen X, probably closer to the top for them. Reliable performance and durability were all important, but durability was extremely important to Gen Z and millennials. And a part of that is tied to this aesthetic of, or this mantra of keeping things out of landfills. So for them, durability is, I'm not going to put it in the landfill. Joe Derechowski, we work a lot with Joe. He's here today. I'm really happy to have him. And so one of the things that Joe does is he's probably the most sought-after home industry advisor. He works with different companies to sort of help them align strategically with what consumers want and what the industry is seeing. So we asked him for his opinion on the importance of quality.
Thank you, Springboard partners, Tom and Leanne, for the opportunity to be here. I want to talk a little bit about quality. I started work with General Motors in 1983. And at the time, we had very high market share, but it eroded very much during the 1980s and the early part of the 90s, in part because there were questions about quality. And it opened the door, one, for competitors to come in, Toyota, Honda, and others, but it also kind of established a spot in the consumer's mind that took a little while to dig out of. Now today, the cars are great, but it is one of those things that it just created a big hole to dig out of for a while. For us in the housewares industry, we don't want to open that door. We have unique times in front of us. One, we have a greater home-centric lifestyle because of the pandemic, and for the rest of the decade, we'll have more of a home-centric lifestyle. And what that means is also that there's going to be increased usage of our products. So it's critical that we start to raise the bar of the quality to make sure that we can be able to handle the increased usage that we have. The second thing is we get a chance where we have a lot of age groups and a lot of life moments being the incremental part of the population, hitting whether retirement, empty nester stage, or first home, having first kids phase, where we do a lot of life purchases at that moment. But we also have the 18 to 24-year-olds who are a group who learned how to cook more than any other generation because of the pandemic at that time. And so if we can establish quality in their minds, as well as everybody's, we have a chance to have a ramp of growth that extends even beyond the rest of the decade. So it is critical for us to be thinking about what can we do to our processes, what can we do to win mind share, and more importantly, what can we do to ensure that our brand stands for quality? It is a critical success factor for the rest of the decade and for the future. And I want us to be thinking about it simply like taste. We can eat a food once, but if it doesn't taste good, we're not eating it the second or third time. We can buy a quality product once, but if it doesn't meet the expectations, it's going to be hard to get those additional purchases. Good luck, and thank you for all you do. Bye.
So I think the message is pretty clear. It was encapsulated in yesterday's sessions. I don't know how many of you saw the NPD, NPD Springboard and Market Watch session yesterday. One thing came to the fore, and that was we've spent the last 18 months, consumers have spent the last 18 months falling in love with their homes again, falling in love with their kitchens, falling in love with their families, and spending all this time together and with these products. This is ours to lose. We have to make sure now that we're going back to the office, and how do we keep it easy? How do we make it, how do we help people keep up the parts of it that they loved and lose the parts that they maybe didn't really love? So the takeaway, seeing more focus on long-term functionality. Drivers of utility are still really important here. And honestly, poor quality is just quicksand. It affects everything, and it happens really fast. And a lot of it is invisible to you until you're underwater. The last one is lifestyle benefits. So, we've been talking a lot about intangibles. It was so fuzzy around the ends that we thought it was important to define it for respondents. So we said they deliver benefits beyond their main function. So for example, you may buy a set of cookware and you expect it to deliver a more healthful lifestyle. What we really tracked on here was that functional benefits remained important, but really those fall more into quality. But we were seeing a big rise here was in intangible benefits. So let's look at what people said. They were allowed to pick two. Which of the following lifestyle benefits affect your purchase decision? We're going to jump straight up to like what was the most important. If you look at the bottom three, enhancing emotional health, promoting physical wellness, and inspiring time with family and friends. The Market Watch survey, which was done completely independently, was so closely aligned with these numbers, it was shocking. But, it's interesting because in the past, we really saw it living up to the top. We saw people buying things and expecting it to enhance their skills, expecting it to really deliver, make them more creative, especially in baking. We've seen a lot of that, right? So it's like, make me a better baker. I want bakery quality. I want to push that out. So it was just great to see all this attention paid to intangibles, but it's still pretty scary.
Oh, absolutely. We also took a
Sorry.
look at
My bad.
We also took a look at the health and wellness. We thought this was just an interesting little data point that when you think about physical wellness, you've got Gen Z and baby boomers, and when you think about emotional health, it's reversed. I mean, I don't think that's news to anybody. Older people have been hearing for the last 2 years, you're the highest risk people. Don't go out. You're going to get, you have a high likelihood of getting ill. And older people, they have their personalities a little more developed, defined. They have a sense of who they are, whereas young people are really struggling. And I think we really need to, first of all, it was interesting that the switch is almost even, but I think we really, as an industry, again, need to know what we can do to support people in these journeys.
I think also, just to throw something in quick, it's very easy for us to say in our industry, well, what can I do? It's like they don't buy from me. But understand that the generations that are caregivers to younger generations are often our key clients. Deal with the gateway, deal with their parents, help them find ways to work together, to spend time together, to deal with the obesity issues. Again, it varies per generation, but there's a real, and same thing with Market Watch. Market Watch research pointed to this yesterday really strong, but emotional health is, it's really, really important, especially for younger generations, and we can fix it, we can help it. So.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing for us was on this whole idea of socialization and spending time with family and friends. Millennials and Gen X were the top. We think that has to do with having kids in the home and wanting to get the kids out and get them socializing, have the kids meet other people in the family. So we think there's some really interesting digging to be done in here.
Yeah, just the fact that look at how high millennials are. We really expected boomers to top that number and to be up there with, wanting to get together with family and friends again. But boomers came in number 3. So, and I mean, to see how much millennials want to socialize again, it's really, they're dealing with not just work-life balance, but with tech-life balance. So you're seeing a lot of talk about IRL in real life and how important that is. And again, this is something we can enable.
Well, one last interesting point on that, was if you think about, again, for this industry, the people that are most interested in the socializing and entertainment are the people who still need to buy stuff. Mm-hmm. So think about how you can meet your needs.
Yeah, also keep in mind that it wasn't specifically online or in real life. So when we say, Gen Z inspiring time with family and friends, a part of the reason why that number is falling off is that they consider themselves as already spending time with family and friends. So looking for an increase in that is not necessarily saying that they don't value it. For their over 38% of Gen Z say that some of their closest friends they've never physically met. So take that one home. But that's why, so it's, so we wanted to talk a little bit to Michelle Lamb. She's one of the people who helped us put the survey together and who helped us execute. She's always brilliant when it comes to home style.
When our research revealed that the top responses were around spending time with friends and family, including entertaining, none of us was really surprised. This is what we've all been craving. And that's why I believe that the holidays in 2022 and 2023 will have special opportunities for retailers. This is true not only because the guest lists will be longer, and that means that people will be buying more total things, but also because we think consumers will be splurging. Because on the one hand, it's the holiday, but on the other hand, we've been apart for so long, and now we can be together. At the same time, we think this pent-up demand to be with one another is going to generate a lot of non-holiday entertaining opportunities. Something like a backyard barbecue with your neighbors just because it's Wednesday, and you can. We believe that retailers can offer support and solutions to consumers who are stretching their entertaining legs in ways they haven't in at least 2 years. We've all read the articles about how people are much better at social distancing than they are with social interaction. So what about a conversation starter game that's merchandised right next to tableware, placemats, and napkins? A lot of us have learned new cooking skills over the last 2 years, and we're confident in those skills, but we might not be that confident about putting together an entire menu when we have our friends or family to the house. So what about taking a page out of the apparel playbook? I love how apparel uses one key item and then they'll put other pieces around it to form 3 or 4 outfits with completely different looks. We can do the same thing with one key entree, with side dishes around it to create 3 or 4 different menus that you can use depending on your mood or the people who are coming to your house. Think about using a QR code on your selling floor that would show the menus and show the recipes, and then merchandise all of the prep tools, storage, cooking, and baking pieces they'll need right next to it. The opportunities will be many, and I'm looking forward to watching the industry seize every one of them.
I think one of the things with what Michelle's saying, and we've certainly heard a lot more about it at the show, is keep in mind that people are not necessarily as comfortable as we think they are about going back to entertaining again, especially late Gen Xers and boomers. It's like we've spent so much time, we know how to do things, we're just not quite sure about how the timing of things. So in the box types of solutions, everything you need in here to do this are really beneficial. And QR codes, by the way, are way back. So it's like everybody was shitting on them, and saying that they were like a thing of the past. They're super important. People love them. You're going to restaurants now, touch-free menus that are like on your table on a key card and stuff.
And I just want to build on that 1 second, and we're on the home stretch here, but it's not just about having everything in a box. It could be merchandised well, so you bring a solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Digitally or physically, to put it all together. People are still shopping surgically. They're not wandering the store like they used to. Bring solutions together for them and make them travel a little bit less. So the importance of emotional and tangible benefits, really important. I don't know whether I love this photo or it scares me. Tangible benefits are still important, but they're the price of entry. They're table stakes now. You have to have tangible benefits. And then, again, come see us. This is some of the things that we address in this report. You're going to be seeing it spread out across the IHA over the course of the next 12 months in different interviews and things like that. And thank you all for being here, and thank you all for coming to market. So.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Leanne. I know we want to get you back on the show floor as quick as possible, but if there are a couple of questions, we have time for that right now. Will you guys stick around and answer some questions if we can? Sure. Yeah, anyone? Well, I know I have a question. We've talked a lot about fluidity. You compared this to data that you did last year. Is it much more necessary to continually ask the same questions more often than not?
It's a really good question. There were some big swings, and I think that's one of the things that we really learned from this was there were points that we thought, the value equation is stable. Not only is it not stable, not only is it flexible, but also it's very fluid across generations. I think that, and a part of that is we're driven by, there's a great article by Adobe called The Fluid Self. It talks about how consumers we want to reinvent ourselves constantly. We don't go through life, and it's not just Gen X or millennials, we don't go through life with like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be this. We're constantly challenged socially to, some people see us as funny, some people see us as great bakers, some people see us as musicians. We have different personalities, and we're expected to keep advancing all of them. So it's like, static is death. So helping consumers be different things, but that means that the value equation changes. Right. So that's why we're working with the IHA to say, okay, what's the update this month? What's important? What are the big shifts?
And there might be nuances based on, again, world events. That's why I believe you have to do it not like every other day, but the beautiful thing is that research is no longer capital R, $180,000, 19 months worth of investment. I mean, you can do some really nice data collection in some very interesting and effective ways.
It wasn't too long ago that people used to talk about, let's have a 5-year plan. It's almost now you need a 5-week plan when it comes to understanding how you need to adapt your business. One quick question, over here.
So people used to, let's say a knife that they would buy, they used to use 3 times a week. They're using maybe 14 times a week now. How do you find that's impacting their desire for quality and price point?
I couldn't hear the question.
Can you just give me that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. So basically, they're leaning on their home goods more. So a knife that would get
Yeah.
5 uses a week,
Okay.
3 uses a week, are getting 15 uses a week. Are consumers finding that they like the high quality and the high price points? Are they leaning more toward that now because they're using those items more?
And this is where data requires interpretation. So one of the things that we were seeing in quality was that quality seemed to be less important to Gen Z, okay? And we were like, what? So, because it was so much more important to everybody else. And when we dug into it a little bit deeper, what we found was that Gen Z associated quality with price. And since they couldn't afford it, they were saying, it's not as important to us because that's not, we don't have a bottomless wallet. But quality in general, it's an echo of 2008, really. We saw the cookware industry really take on some nice, in 2008, despite the fact that it was a briefer recession, so to speak. We saw people investing in cookware because they knew they were going to be using it more. We're definitely seeing the same thing here, especially in more durable products, cookware, cutlery. We're seeing. The other thing is to address price point issues, though, and make quality more accessible to in a less stable environment. Consider open stock. We're hearing a lot more about open stock, especially in tableware. Also, look at people like there's a company called Material Kitchen. I love them. I mean, this is amazing.
But Material Connection.
No, Material Kitchen.
Oh, different.
Material Connection I love too. We do a lot of work with them. But Material Kitchen, they've just taken the kitchen. They're a direct-to-consumer brand. But they've taken kitchen tools and gadgets and cutlery and said, okay, you need 3 great tools. And you want to be able to, they talk to consumers and said, you want to be able to take them to the table, use them to prep, and then have them good-looking enough you can take them to the table to serve. You don't need 17 knives, so you need 3 knives, really. And you don't need 8 steak knives. You need no steak knives. So they really let you construct your own thing. You can buy it separately. Not cheap, probably one of the more expensive. It's a better, best type of process. But it's like they're doing great because they're responding to what consumers want, which is I don't need 8 steak knives in a block. This is not 1985.
I hope there's no steak knife and cutlery block people in the room today, Tom. But
boy.
no, I'm kidding.
The other thing I think we need to keep in mind is you have to overlay life stage with ages, and I think people as they're starting out and just getting their first apartments and things like that are less likely to say they want the quality thing that they're going to take with them forever. But as you're more established and you've got a family and things like that, you're probably adjusting that point of view.
Look at the way people live. It sounds stupid, but you have to be a culture vulture in our business. When you look at kitchens now, so much is hidden. And so what do you do if you're a spice rack company and you're used to selling a 20-bottle spice rack that's this big, that's a carousel with 3 spices that people actually use? It's not on the wedding list anymore, guys. I'm sorry if anybody here is going to get killed when I get out of here. But the idea is just really, really watch. Like, what's the solution to that? How can you solve that? And don't be afraid to reach over into other businesses. If you do great with your product, you look at companies like Brabantia, who people trust them. So they've started moving into other categories in home, that maybe, do people, no, but I have a reputation for quality. Quality lets you reach out into areas that are maybe not something you do today.
We have one more question back here, and I'm sure if anyone who wants to meet with Tom and Leanne up to the side, I'm sure they can stick around for a little bit. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, with the work at home trend probably like staying for a while, how do you see housewares companies increasingly producing products or adding features to create work-at-home friendly coffee mugs, dishes, etc.?
I'm sorry, you mean as styles change, how do housewares companies?
I think the question is, if you're working from home, how do you adapt and create products that are more applicable to a work-at-home scenario? Is that right? Okay.
Well, we're certainly seeing construction change a lot in kitchens to incorporate areas that are workstations in the kitchen. That one of the interesting things that we were talking to somebody about what people do in the kitchen, one of the surveys came up with the number 3 thing people do in the kitchen medicate themselves, which I thought meant something completely different. But it's, they take vitamins in the kitchen, they take pills in the kitchen. So like, why is everything in the bathroom cabinet and not in the kitchen cabinet? Because you have to take it with food. And I was like, wow, that's something like I'd never thought of. So I hit this market and I'm starting to look for things that you can put pills inside a cabinet and keep it safe and all that. But I think that everything has to be, you have to address things multifunction. And I think one of the great things you see is read Good Housekeeping, read magazines about how people really live. Some of the best ideas that a lot of PD people that I work with have is they go to crowdfunding sites, they go to hacks. Look up hacks. You'll be amazed.
Amazing, yeah.
Hacks, like just Google, great kitchen hacks. Things that are like, there's a whole bunch of syrup bottles, for example. There's like 3 new syrup bottles that they show that came off of hacks that people were using old ketchup bottles to do syrup or to make, to do pancake batter. So it's like, work backwards from what consumers are telling you works for them already.
I can only take one more question, because then we got to let everyone roll.
Sorry, am I talking on you?
Hold on.
I can't say hello in 5 minutes. So it's like,
Hi. When you talk about durability, do you also mean sustainability? And where does that fall for the consumer? How important is it?
I don't. Durability has, for someone who wants to live a more sustainable lifestyle, durability is important to them. And so by default, you wind up throwing it out less, you wind up buying less, so you're doing better for the planet. Sustainability is something different, and what we're seeing is a movement away from the word sustainability, and people like Material Connection are promoting that, because they're like, sustainable just means you keep doing it, So people are looking, like, plastic is sustainable, but what we're really looking at is just be transparent about, again, when we started doing sustainability, and it's one of the things you're gonna see in the survey, we found that younger generations care about it less. We're like, this is absolutely
Not true.
wrong. We found out when we dug a little deeper is that younger generations, it's baked in for them. They expect it. So for them, what's more important, maybe it reads that social responsibility is more important, but it's because that's more immediate and needs more immediate attention. And environmental responsibility is a little bit lower because they expect it now. They're not going to buy it if it's not, since that's table stakes now. Be transparent, or you will be made transparent. You may not think that people are comparing and that's where suppliers, people look at what your suppliers do. So make sure that you hold your suppliers responsible and push them to provide you with sustainable alternatives or responsible. That's what we're trying to change the language to, is environmental responsibility, not sustainability.
Tom, Leanne, thank you very much. Lots to think about as we go back to the show. Just a reminder, at noon today, we'll have Leigh Eisman from the Pantone Institute giving us her annual home color forecast. Hope to see you there. Have a great show, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.